So here are 5 things that you may want to consider when buying your very first rural property in the Niagara region. The inspiration for this video came from my most recent transaction where they bought their very first rural property in the Niagara region, and some things came up, and I thought, maybe I could share this with other people that are in similar situations, and that way the information could help you and get you to understand a little bit more about what you're getting into if you're making that consideration. So there's no particular order with this list, and we're going to start off with number 1, which is taking a look at the land itself. Yes, it's important to walk the land, try to go through it as much as you can, but more importantly, we want to identify the zoning that surrounds this land. Is there any sort of restrictions either by the municipality or the conservation authority? And are they going to, impede your vision of that property? So say, for example, we find something where it's got this beautiful house on there. It's 2 acres. There's a creek that's running through it, and it just doesn't have a garage. You're like, man, if we can get a 2-car or maybe 3-car garage on this property, it would be like the chef's kiss. If that's the case there, then I will make sure that I look into the municipality, the conservation authority, because if there's, a 100-year floodplain that's mapped out over that section of the property where you want that garage to be erected, you won't be able to do that. So it's, that's going to be a discussion afterwards to see whether or not this is going to be a make or break scenario, and if there might be some other option that's out there that could actually fulfill what you're looking for. Some cases, there's a sizable land, and the owner has, grown crops. They're selling crops. And if that's the case, there might be some tax implications that are surrounding that. There are times when we come across properties that have a hobby farm, and we want to see whether or not this is something that you want to continue or that you're looking for, because if that's the case, my mortgage broker will need to know those details, so that way they can find the appropriate financial product to help fund that property. So things like this, depending on your scenario, we want to, really take a look at the land, and if there's any sort of restrictions that might be, on that land that may impede, what you would like to do with the property. Number 2 is going to be something that we don't really think of at all when we take a look at rural properties, because we're just so used to it in a city setting, and that is cell phone signal quality. I always encourage people when we're looking at rural properties to take out their phone, see if they have signal, and make a phone call if they question that signal strength. We also want to take a look at your internet providers. Are there multiple internet providers? Is there just one? What's the quality like? If you require high-speed internet, just keep in mind that it might be a little bit more difficult to achieve that in a rural setting. So cellular signal quality and internet speed could be a deal breaker for some, but for others, it's nothing at all. Number 3 has to deal with water and your sewage. So in a city setting, you have something that's called municipal services, and they pretty much provide you with an unlimited amount of water and sewage usage. The only thing that you really have to think about is the bill that you get in the mail. Whereas in a rural setting, you are a little bit more aware of these systems because they are now on your property. So in the case of water, you may have just a well, you may have just a cistern, a combination of the two. We have to test that water when we're considering the purchase of that property. And even when the testing is completed and is passed, there's ongoing maintenance, especially for a cistern. So you want to make sure that the cistern is cleaned out at least once a year. There's filtration systems that are on the water side that you have to replace. So these are things that you got to think about. And if you have a teenager in the household that loves their 1 hour, 2 hour showers, you're gonna have to have a conversation with them and say, sorry, we have a limited amount of water that we truck in, and you have to cut that down significantly, right? So these are discussions and mindfulness of the water for your house, because now they're on your property. And same with your septic. Your septic is what processes human waste, and we want to have that inspected. There's 2 different types of inspections that can be performed on that septic system. Some home inspectors can also perform that like lightweight septic inspection and give you a report back. But if there is a lot of question marks surrounding the integrity of the septic system, you might want to have a more thorough inspection performed to ensure that that it's working as intended and that you're going to get the life out of that system. And afterwards, once the testing is completed or the inspection is completed, every 3 to 5 years, you're going to have that septic pumped out. There's that saying, if it's yellow, let it mellow. If it's brown, flush it down. These are things you got to be thoughtful of. And, you can't flush down chemicals. You can't use those, pucks that turn the water blue and that kind of stuff, because you have bacterial culture that's in the septic that needs to be able to do their job. And you need to buy septic-friendly toilet paper. So these systems are now in your hands. You are going to be a little bit more hands-on with them and be more mindful, whereas in the urban setting, you don't really think about it except for your bill. So that's something to know. Number 4 only really applies when we come across homes that have a wood fire stove inside the home. And if that's the case, we want to consider performing a wet inspection. And that is something that's completely separate from a home inspection altogether. And the reason why you want to perform that is, A, you want to make sure that that equipment is running well, so that way when you throw a log on the fire, that you don't have to worry about any potential hazards. You're mitigating that risk. And some insurance companies, some insurance providers will require to have that report if there is a wood-fired stove that's there. So if we come across that, I do include that with the offer, is to get the wet inspection performed, so that way we can see whether or not it's working as intended. Number 5 is weather-related, and you are going to come across some storms. And when they come, oftentimes you'll have a power outage. You'll have a blackout. And when you are in a rural property, typically, the hydro companies are going to try to address the more densely populated areas first, and then work their way out. I've never worked for a hydro company, but whenever I talk with my clients that are in a town or a city versus a rural setting, it seems as though that these more densely populated areas tend to have their lights turned back on much faster than those that live in a rural setting. And when that happens, usually you want to have some sort of generator. Now, the current owners may have one there, but they may want to take that to their next property. So we want to identify these things and see whether or not they're included in the household. And if not, obviously, you can buy your own if you want to. But, we want to make sure that there's some sort of system that's in place in the event of a blackout. Now, snowfall. We want to take a look at where the house is situated on the land, right? Because if it's close to the public road, then you have your more traditional driveway where you can take a shovel or maybe like a snow blower and manage your snow removal, right? But sometimes the property is a little bit more further back from the roadway. And how far back? Is that snow blower really going to cut it? Or do you need like some sort of small ATV with, a shovel in the front to help manage your snow? And sometimes, and I've come across properties where they are so far back, you absolutely need some sort of pickup truck or old Jeep with a proper plow on the front to manage the snow removal of that roadway leading up to your house, because it's just so far back. There's no way that a traditional snowblower is going to be able to cover that kind of distance. And then when it comes to the public road, again, when it comes to snow removal, highways are going to be taken care of immediately, right? That's the priority with the province. And then the more densely populated areas, the areas that have high traffic, are going to be salted and plowed more frequently, and the rural roads, not so much. So if you have a 2-wheel drive Toyota Camry and it's the only car in the household, maybe you might want to consider looking at a RAV4 all-wheel drive and maybe even get some snow tires, because you never know. You might come across times when there's heavy snowfall and the road hasn't been plowed at all, and you need to get home. If you are looking for a rural type of property but in the city where you don't have to worry about septic and cisterns and that kind of stuff, check out this listing. This is my listing here. It's 440 South Pelham, It's located in the west end of Welland. It's in a great neighborhood. It's a very rare bird. You don't see homes that have 1.78 acres in the city of Welland. I have my contact details, so if you're not working with a realtor, I would love to be able to work with you, hear what your goals are, and see if we can get you a great deal while we're at it. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.